Hi, this is the video recording for today's Charts and Graphs class. We're going to talk about comparing and contrasting different kinds of visuals. So remember that on a test you have information that comes to you in different ways. Some of it comes to you in paragraphs of text, but other information comes to you in visuals or graphics. So we've talked about a bunch of different kinds of visuals. We've talked about maps, we've talked about graphs, we've talked about flowcharts, we've talked about tables, we've talked about timelines. So all different kinds of visual, political cartoons or editorial cartoons, all kinds of different visuals that you might encounter on the test. And in this class, we think about how to interpret these different kinds of visuals. So today we're going to be taking some different kind of visuals and comparing them and contrasting them to one another. Now, teachers always use that compare and contrast. But you know what? Comparing and contrasting are basically the same thing. To compare two things means to show the similarities and differences. To contrast two things means to show the similarities and differences. But teachers often use compare to mean looking at similarities, contrast to mean looking at differences, but they're really the same thing. We're just comparing different visuals. So we've got our first set of visuals here, and we see that we've got what looks like a little picture here, but look, actually it is a graph. Do you see it's a line graph? So if we just drew in the axes here, up and down, you can see that this is just a line graph with a picture of a dollar bill in back of it. Over here we have a table. Remember that tables have columns and rows, so this one has two columns and it has a number of rows, right? And on that table, or also called a chart, table or chart, we see different basic minimum wages in different states. Now, the graph on this side has the title Federal Hourly Minimum Wage. So that's the minimum wage set by the federal government, the U.S. government. And then over here, we have the minimum wages in different states. Okay, so let's take a look at the questions. We might point out here that the federal government does set a minimum wage. The states also set minimum wages. Cities and counties sometimes set minimum wages. So the minimum wage under which a given person works depends on the government entity that governs the area where your job is, right? So it might be the state, it might be the federal government, it might be the city. Okay, so number one says, which of the following can you infer? Remember that infer means to figure out a logical guess based on clues. To infer is to figure out a logical guess based upon clues. So which of the following can we infer by comparing and contrasting information on the two visuals? So number one says business ventures affect minimum wage. Well, do we see anything on either of these visuals about different kinds of businesses? No, we just see federal government, state government, and minimum wages. So A cannot be inferred from the information on these two visuals. B, Massachusetts enacted the first minimum wage law. Again, there's no information here about when these minimum wages were enacted or set. There are some years down here, but this is just about the federal government. There are no years on here. I mean, there is. It's the basic minimum wage in 2012. But there's nothing here about when different minimum wage laws were set, so B doesn't work. C, Georgia has a lower cost of living than the other states. Well, we also don't see anything here about cost of living, but what we do see is that Georgia has the lowest minimum wage anywhere listed here for 2012. right? The minimum wage, federal minimum wage in 2012 is $7.25. And these are all listed here. So Georgia has the lowest minimum wage, so that may mean something. D, increasing the federal minimum wage creates new jobs. So there's nothing here about, we can't get that any answer about that from these two graphs. It doesn't tie these to the number of jobs that are around at any given minimum wage. So the only possible one is C, and in order to figure that out, we need to think about a cost of living in a state is how much relatively things cost. Rent, food, transportation, stuff like that in one state compared to another state. So if you have a lower cost of living, people might be able to get by on a lower minimum wage. So C is the only possible answer, so that's what we're going for. Number 2, in which of the following ways do the minimum wages in California and Massachusetts compare to the federal minimum? So California has an $8 minimum wage. Massachusetts has an $8 minimum wage. In 2012, which is when these are, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. So theirs are higher than the federal minimum wage. So find the answer that says that. A says they're lower. C says they're equal. D says California's minimum wage is lower than the federal, while Massachusetts is higher, but they're the same. So the only possible answer there is C. Okay? All right. We're going to look at page 127 and look at the next chart here. All right. I think I'm going to end this video and handle the next page on the next video. All right? See you in a minute.